Good evening. Good evening. My name is Pat Porwood. I'd like to welcome you to our Zoom and Learn, which tonight we are so lucky to have Donna Linder, who is the Stanislaus County Clerk Recorder, Registrar of Voters, and the Commissioner of Civil Marriage. She is an amazing woman and a very busy woman at this time, so we were very lucky to be able to have her speak tonight. She's a longtime resident of Stanislaus County. She was born in Turlock, lived in Modesto since the age of 15, graduate of Bayer High School, Modesto Junior College, and earned her Bachelor of Arts from Ashford University. She's a member of the California Association of Clerk and Election Officials, the County Recorders Association of California, and chairs the central area of the California Association of Clerks. Ms. Linder has worked in every unit of the Clerk Recorder Department, from entry level all the way through management, including the Assistant Clerk Recorder and Registrar of Voters, up to her current position as the elected Clerk Recorder and Registrar of Voters. Over the past 17 years of her career, she has personally worked on 40 local elections, but I bet there's never been one quite like this one. So anyway, we are very lucky to have her tonight. She was elected to her position in June of 2018 and took her oath of office in January of 2019. So she's here tonight to tell us about as many facts as we need to know or don't know, questions about the voting procedures and options for returning completed ballots. So we would like to welcome Donna Linder. Thank you for taking the time out to do this.
Thank you very much to all of you for having me. And so I just want to give you some information about the election, how we got to where we are today, and what you'll see as this election starts taking shape. So next slide. So in June of 2020, our assembly passed a bill 860, which says that the Registrar of Voters in California would mail a ballot to all of our registered active voters. So Stanislaus County has mailed those ballots out. They went yesterday. I heard somebody say they got their ballot today, which is very exciting. That means our postal service is getting them to you quickly. And then August 6th, the Senate passed a bill that required us to have locations for voters that needed assistance. So we are following those two laws and have kind of changed the way that we'll be conducting this election somewhat. And this is all the statewide plan to reduce the spread of the coronavirus. So as I mentioned, October 5th, all ballots will mail. That's part of election code. Election code changed this year to say that we would mail ballots 29 days prior to the election to all the voters that are registered as vote by mail, and in this election to all of our registered voters. Ballots come out in a prepaid envelope so that you don't have to pay for postage to send that back to us. So you can just mark your ballot, put it in the envelope, and we have all kinds of options for you to get back to us. One thing I like to clarify, because we get a lot of calls, people don't want that vote by mail ballot, they want their regular absentee. They are the same thing. In 2009, an assembly bill was passed, 1572, and it essentially just says, don't call them absentee anymore, call them vote by mail. And so we call them vote by mail ballot, absentee to you, whatever works. Their ballot you're going to put in the mail. So we want to talk about vote by mail, how safe and secure it is for the Stanislaus County voters, because there's some concern for that. So every ballot that we receive, your envelope is checked. We verify things like your signature. If there's no signature, we can't accept those ballots. If there's a box on the envelope that you can mark and say, I spoiled my ballot, I made a mistake, so we can send you a new one. If a voter's deceased, a lot of times a family member will write that on there. Most of the time we have that information, but maybe since we have to mail ballots on the 5th, we send that data off for our mail house, a few weeks in advance. So maybe something happened in between. If it was signed by someone else, we see a lot of times husbands and wives, they probably sit around the kitchen table, vote their ballots, and they get their envelopes mixed up. So they sign each other's envelopes. And so we'll go through, especially if it's husband and wife, we can still match those up. Wrong election. I don't know where those envelopes were, but people send back ones for other elections. If they arrive too late, we'll talk later about how long you have to get your ballot back to us. If a voter votes twice, we're watching for that. Our system catches that. So there's no way for that to happen. If there's something missing in the envelope, or if the voter is registered in a different county, so not registered here. So our staff is checking those signatures against the voter registration. So that's a question a lot of times we get. How do you have our signature? Where do you have that information? So when you register to vote, you are signing your affidavit, and that's where we get the signatures. If your signature does not match, it goes through a 2-pass review. It goes to a manager and then to a higher manager, and they have access to more signatures. So your first signature that comes up is your most recent registration, but they can look back at anything that you have signed and turned into our office. We scan and attach that to your registration. So we have those other signatures. So it's amazing, sometimes you see people who sign things that they think are official documents very carefully, and then that matches one way, but then maybe on their ballot envelope, it was, more scribbly, and they sent us a note and it matches that. So there's a lot of ways we're looking to find that. We also, if your ballot does not match or your signature is missing, we're going to contact the voter and send them out a form so that they are notified of this information. So for this election, the idea is that you can mark your ballot wherever it's easiest for you. You don't have to drive around. You don't have to go to one of our satellite offices and wait in crowded lines, or, go to any type of location. You can mark your ballot at home. If you need assistance, you can go to a satellite office. You can come down to our office for anything you need. And we are offering a lot of options for you to drop off your ballot in different locations too. That may be more convenient for you. After signatures are verified, ballots are opened. So this is another question people ask, because we take so much work in at a polling location to make sure your vote is private. What happens in our office? Is that still the case? And it is. So we have 2 systems. One is where we scan your ballot in to give you credit for voting, and that's where your registration is, and we check your registration against, or your signature against that registration. And then our count system is in a totally different room, separate from that system. So they don't correspond. So once we've verified your signature in the registration system, then we take them to our opening machines, and they're removed from there. So we don't see your registration. And then next slide. So that's showing you some of the volume that we get of our vote by mail ballots. Stanislaus County has always had a high volume of vote by mail. We, prior to this election, were at 77%. So we have always received a lot of vote by mail ballots within this county. So you see there, these ballots are ready to go in the opening room. They've all been signature verified, and then we sort them historically by precinct. We're changing that a little bit for this election and sorting them by ballot type. So next. So here they are in that opening room, which is kind of moved for this election, but they tap the ballots down so that when you put them in the machine, they aren't going to slice your ballot, which would damage it and it couldn't be opened. Next. So in this picture, the reason I put it in here is so that you could see. The machine cuts the tops and the sides of your envelope, and then it runs it through and pulls it open. So our operators cannot see your name. So now your vote is totally private. They're going to pull that ballot out. The envelope moves off to the side. You can see where the girl is opening them. It's moving off to the side and into that hole where it drops down into a storage bin. And you can see in the picture with the gentleman how it's leaning so you can't see the name on there. So we don't know how you voted. So I always like to say, we know that you voted, but not how you voted. So your vote is kept totally private still within our office through vote by mail. Next. They have little competitions to see who can be the fastest, and he wins all the time. So next slide. We have to find fun somewhere. And this is a tray of ballots ready to be flattened. So each ballot has to be flattened in order to run through the scanner to be counted. So next slide. This is one of our most labor-intense processes as far as processing your ballot, because each one has to be flattened out and then back folded so that it's flat enough to go into the machine. So we have rows and rows of people who get one tray at a time so the ballots never get mixed, and they sit and flatten ballots. It's a lengthy process. It'll look quite different from this year for social distancing. So next is more people flattening. This takes at least a day. And this is our count room. They're prepping the ballots to go through our scanners. And they put them in batches and chunks, and they're ran through the scanner. And then the scanner takes the information and holds it. And then what we do is on election night at 8 o'clock, so we start processing ballots historically. Code said we could process ballots 2 weeks prior to election. This election, we can process them the day we received them. As I was leaving the office today, someone was putting their ballot in the ballot box in front of our office. So that was pretty exciting. I called inside and told everyone. So, but we could start processing as soon as we start receiving them. So our plan is to actually start next Tuesday. And so those go into the scanner system, but you cannot pull the results. We don't see how people voted. We don't know the numbers or anything until election night at 8 o'clock. And then they're taken on a drive and pulled from that system. And the 2 computers that you see behind the gentleman's head, that's where they're put in and the tallies are pulled together. This system is air gapped. It isn't connected to anything. And it's in a locked room that only 4 of us have a code to. There are ways to track your ballot. You can sign up this year for what's called ballot tracks through the Secretary of State's office. So, and this is all in your voter information guides also. So you can go to where's my ballot, sos.ca.gov, and sign up for that process. Or you can go to our website. And that option has always been there, where you could go to standvote.com and put in your information, and it'll tell you if we received your ballot, if there's been a challenge put on it, or if it's been processed and counted. Next slide. So I mentioned this before, 77% of Stanislaus County residents have already been registered as vote by mail. 15 counties in California, as of the last election, were all vote by mail. It's been kind of a trend in California to move in that direction, to become all vote by mail with what they call vote centers. We're calling them satellite offices because we are not a voter's choice county at this time. All eligible ballots are counted. And like I mentioned, your first results on election night are the ballots that we've received prior to the election. So always in the past, when you got those results at 8 o'clock, they were the ballots that we received prior to election day, the vote by mail. And then we have 30 days after the election to finish counting all the ballots that we receive on election day and in the mail for the few days after. So some of our strict security measures next. For our drop boxes, so drop boxes we introduced in March. We had 7 drop boxes at our city clerk's offices. So we have set up our chain of custody and our processes at that time. So by code, there's times when we have to pick them up 96 hours, excluding Saturdays at a certain time. And then after the 29th day, then, or prior to the 29th day, anyway, it's on the next page. And so anyway, they have the protocols. So every 72 hours until the 10th day, and then every, I can't remember, 24 hours, we we are going to pick up more often than that. So that's why I don't have this totally in my head. We will be picking up every other day from our drop boxes. That way we can make sure that the ballots are getting processed, we don't get behind, and the votes are taken in, and everything's kept secure also. Next. So this is a picture of our outdoor drop box. This is in front of our office, actually. So, and I took this picture, so hopefully you can tell what it says. So this is the front and the side of the drop box, and you can see that it's pretty secure. It is bolted into the cement, and it has security on it at all times. We have one at our office and in Oakdale at Birchall Nursery, which the address you can find on our website. So these boxes are out there open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week as of yesterday. Next. And this is a picture of our indoor box. We took these pictures prior to deploying them. So, but you can see that they have signage, they have our logo on the sides, and the locks on the front will have padlocks on them. The top lock has a security seal, and our staff are the only ones with the keys to the padlocks that will be on the front of these for them to go out and pick up the ballots from those boxes. The next slide will show you how that works. So inside each box, the outdoor boxes and the indoor boxes are black bags. So when the staff goes to pick up the box, unlike at the Postal Service where you see the postman opens the mailbox and then he pulls all the letters out and puts them into a bin, our staff goes out and they take this black bag out. It hooks to little loops on the sides. They take that out of the box and they zip it up and they put the seal on it. And then as their chain of custody, they have to mark the seal where the bag came from and that type of thing. So they're never touching or handling the ballots that are in the bags. They just remove the bag and seal it up. And then they replace it with another bag. That's an outdoor box and an indoor box. That is the process. So, and there's always two people with these ballots. So they'll go around and pick them up. And then you always have somebody watching the other. So there's no tampering and they never have access to touch them. Next. So I mentioned this, there's two designated people, always with vote by mail ballots. Always two people are with our ballots. Even in our office, we have we're lucky to be in a bank where we have a vault. Ballots are kept in the vault, and always two people in the vault at a time. People are not left alone with ballots ever. So they'll be designated, they're sworn in. They all take an oath to uphold the Constitution, and they're employees that will be collecting these bags, so they've been vetted through the employee process at the county. Next. Our ballot retrievers, I'm usually doing this, so it's all weird. Our ballot retrievers will always, I mentioned, be in twos. They will always have everything sealed. They will have their forms that they fill out. Each location has an identification number, and all the seals numbers are put on there, the time that they retrieve the ballot, and their chain of custody has a lot of rules and safeguards, and there's scanning options for us too, where we'll scan them in as they get them back to the office, and it shows the chain of custody and you can see where the bags have been for us. Next. So once they receive them at the office, we'll know what time they are. So we have a time frame of when they picked them up to when they got to the office. We'll be inspecting them to make sure there's been no tampering, the seal's there, times and dates are all on them. And then we will be breaking the seal and processing them. Once they're open, they'll go through the same process as the ballots that come through the mail. They'll be gone through signature verification, sorted, opened, flattened. Our chain of custody process is sent to the Secretary of State. So it's been gone through the process of being approved by the Secretary of State, and we follow code on that process also. Next. So all of our election staff that will be retrieving ballots will be wearing these orange vests. That way, if they're out at a ballot box, you'll know exactly why they're there, why they're opening it, who they are. So no one should ever be around a box without this vest on. Our indoor boxes are in stores like Save Mart, O'Brien's, Postal Connection, where there could be a lot of people around. So if the employees of the store happen to see somebody messing with the box, if they don't have this vest on, then they can call the authorities and have that taken care of. So satellite offices are a location where people can go to receive assistance if they need it, if they've lost or damaged their ballot, if they need assistance using one of our accessibility devices, or if they need some kind of language assistance. And we put a lot of security features in place for those. We have ordered cages for all of our equipment to be locked up in. It'll arrive in it. Ballot paper every night is logged and counted and put into the cage for security. Our IT equipment will come out in certain cages, and we've ordered special boxes for all of them, cases for that to be kept in, and they will not have ballot scanners. That is the big change in this election, where you would go to a polling location and there would be a scanner there for you to mark your ballot and scan it, and it was tallied right there at the poll. We have eliminated them to protect the integrity of this election. With every voter receiving a vote by mail ballot, if you happen to go into a satellite office and there was a mistake made and you were given a ballot and you voted it, you could have potentially voted twice. So we've eliminated the scanners at our locations. So next. Here's a picture of the cage that will be taking out the equipment. We played Jenga to get all this equipment in there, but it all fit and it'll all go out there and it'll come back this way, and they're locked with padlocks. They are sent out with cables so that they can be cabled to a permanent object in each location, so that can't run off with one of our cages. Next. We purchased these cages. They will have all of the IT equipment in them. Each office will have 5 laptops. They'll have it's called a Cradle Point. It's how they have connectivity. They don't use internet from any of the locations because we don't want anything that's hackable. So, so everything's kept secure. And so these will have also the ballot paper will be locked into these cages. Next. Each location will have 3 touch writers, and those are for the disabled. They're accessibility machines that can talk to people, change the contrast, make the letters bigger. You can use sip and puff on them, and they actually print the same ballot that everyone else will receive, and it marks it for the voter. So when you go in to a location, you can stay here, you can check in. If you have damaged your ballot, you'll check in, they'll suspend your first ballot, and they'll say, do you want me to print you a ballot that you'll mark the paper, or did you want to use an accessibility device which will mark it and print your ballot for you? So you'll have those 2 options, but you'll be given an envelope still to put your ballot in and sign and then put back into a drop box. Each location will have language assistance. In Stanislaus County, we must provide assistance in Spanish, Assyrian, Khmer, and Punjabi. Any language that exceeds 3% of our population. There will be facsimile ballots at these locations for the Assyrian, Khmer, and Punjabi. If they need translation in their ballots, those will be at the check-in table, and they our employees who speak the languages that are there for assistance will be wearing badges so that they know who they are. We can accept ballots from other counties. That is another law that passed a few years ago. they were accidentally getting mailed to Bally's, to different counties, and there was no way for us legally to get them to each other. So we introduced a bill to pass a law so that we can take another county's ballot and get that off to them so that every vote can be processed. This reminds you that any ballot that comes to us is processed the same way. All vote by mail ballots are taken the same way, whether you take them to a drop box, satellite office, or drop them off in the mail. We will process them all the same way, checking their signatures and making sure everything is processed. Once we've counted all the ballots, we go through a process called a 1% hand tally. And that's where we take 1% of our, this time it'll be our batches, and we double check that that hand process where we hand count the ballot matches what our system says. So our system, our computers go through many different processes. Right now we are doing what's called logic and accuracy testing, where we're testing any equipment that will go out to a satellite office or any of our locations. Our satellite offices will not only have the accessibility equipment, but they will have what's called print, where they can print a ballot for anywhere in the county. So if you live in Riverbank, you can come to a satellite office in Modesto and receive the ballot for Riverbank. So all that equipment's being tested to make sure it has the correct election, the correct ballots, everything prints correctly, it's calibrated. And so that testing is happening now. And then those cages will be created. That was just a sample, so that can be delivered to our satellite offices. In our office, our count room is done the same way. We will have a deck that we've created with, we know how it should turn out, and then we'll run those through to make sure it counts all of the marks correctly. And then again, we double check ourselves with this 1%, where you have the results, you pull the results, and then you count by hand and you see if you match those results. So it's just another way of protection. And then our results are delivered to the Secretary of State, hopefully less than 30 days. I'm sure I forgot to tell you something and you have questions.
Thank you, Donna. We do actually have one question that's been submitted. And while I tackle this question, I want to encourage everyone to please, if you have additional questions for Donna, to use the chat function. So the first question we have says, the leader of one political party has asked his followers to go to polling places to make sure there isn't any cheating. What is being done to prevent this and protect the poll workers since they are not official?
So poll workers now will be a combination of our part-time employees and poll workers. They are all sworn in, so they are official. Poll watching and observing are legal. So you can be a poll watcher and you can be an observer at a poll, satellite offices in our county. We are actually, this is a good question because we're just setting this up. We reach out to organizations in our area that are on the list to be like observers, and we have had a citizen call about being a poll watcher, and we're going to be putting together a training because this election is so different. We're thinking that observers and watchers are going to get there and not know exactly what's supposed to even be happening, and they are allowed to come and watch the process. They cannot interfere with voting. They cannot interfere with any of the voters. They can't poll a voter or talk to a voter. They have to, you know, kind of step aside and just watch, basically, what they're called, poll watchers. So we're going to do a Zoom training to kind of show them what should be happening at each location, and they are allowed to be there. But one of our rules due to COVID and social distancing is they will have an area where they can be, and if too many people are in the location at a time, they may be asked to step outside and rotate through the process. And so we worked with our county council to make sure that our rules and procedures are legal. So that's what we're doing.
Great, thank you. Our next question, do other counties in the state and the rest of the country have these careful processes in place?
A lot of the processes are code. So we live by election code. Election code is a book that is, you can't see my hand, probably about this thick. It's like a little binder, and it's updated every year because the laws change every year. We do have some things in place in our county that are a little bit stricter than other counties. Some of our, like our cages that we're sending out, the way we lock them up, things like that are a little bit more strict than some of the other counties. But we just take it very seriously. We're voters too, and we want to make sure that everything's safe and secure. So, but most of our processes are code.
How are you sure that ballots do not stick together before going into the counting machine?
Oh, that's a good question. So the machines are calibrated. The paper, ballot paper is a certain weight, and the machines are calibrated for that weight. And so if it's too thick, the machine will stop. So it does stop on those. And we get ballots that have jelly on them and all kinds of things. So if a ballot, I see you laughing, we always call it oatmeal too when it's chunky. So if we get a ballot that is too sticky or has something on it that will cause it to not be read correctly, we have a process. So you saw the 1% process where there's 4 people around a table, and that's because you have a caller, a marker, and then you have watchers. And it's the same with if a ballot is damaged, has too much jelly on it, it's going to stick. We have what we call and now the word escapes me, but we duplicate. We duplicate the ballots. So if it's damaged, say it rips or something happens to it, we'll duplicate. And it's the same process. 4 people sit around a table. One person calls what's on the old ballot. One person calls what's on the, or one person marks the new ballot, and people are watching them to make sure that they mark what the person called, or they call what is marked. So, so it's a strict process where there's people watching.
How many ballots can be counted in an hour?
I don't know the answer to that. And that depends on what you mean by that. From start to finish, we used to count once a week. I'll tell you this part. We used to count once a week where we had signature verified them starting on Monday, and they were sorted on Thursday night, and then on Friday we started the process of flattening and counting, and a lot of times we would have to finish on Monday, and there was probably 20,000 ballots that we did that way. So you would start counting at probably 11, 12 o'clock. So 20,000 divided by 10. But we're going to do it differently this year. So because we want to have as much done as possible on election day to have the best results possible, we're going to try and process every day or every other day. So our goal is to count. Typically in the mail, we get anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 ballots. And then we'll also be picking up every other day from our drop boxes. So we'll be processing probably about 7,000 ballots a day. And so I don't know how many in an hour. They go through in bunches of 50 to 100 is a batch that can be put through the machine.
What do you see as the earliest any results will be available to the public?
We cannot give results until after 8 o'clock on election day. That is the soonest our equipment it knows when we pull results, and that is the soonest that you can pull results. So it's a little after 8, and the reason it's a little after 8 is, like I explained, the one side scans, you pull them from there onto a drive, and you have to put it into the other computer that then tallies them all up, and then we pull our results. So it takes a few minutes.
So one of our members just saw today that Old Navy is actually paying 50,000 of its employees to work as poll workers across the United States. So do you see this as a positive move by the company?
So, I don't know. Well, we pay, but not near that much. It depends on what their motivation is. So, and if they're doing it right now, they're kind of late because so your voter information guides came out to you a couple weeks ago. They had to be printed, which is a month before. So you have to have your locations prior to printing the voter information guides. We have to know, so one of the challenges with this election was we didn't know how many workers we had. We started back in May looking for poll workers. That's when the laws started changing and we found that we could use this method, which allowed us to we hired 175 people. Our cancellation rate in Stanislaus County is about 26%. So if we had 1,000 poll workers, 26% of them by election day would have called and said they couldn't come. So we're kind of leaning towards that even with part-time. So we hired more part-time than we needed, but they'll be used not just at the satellite offices, but to pick up the ballots also. And we'll have curbside where there's people there all day long to pick up your ballot. So we needed a lot of people. And then poll workers will also be at your poll to assist you. But these people had to be in place, so they're already assigned to their location and being trained right now as we speak. So we had to know who they were weeks ago. So if you're just now saying, hey, we'll pay you to go out and be a poll worker, you're kind of late. Most counties will have had to have already known who you are and have you placed. And you could be a person who, we always have an on-call list for the people who call in sick at the last minute, and you're trained ahead of time. But that's one thing I think people don't realize, because I get a lot of calls right now from people that say, oh, well, maybe COVID will be better and you can have polls. Well, I can't just throw 145 locations and people into something at this late date. So it's nice of them, but I wish they would have thought of it in June.
Do we have any other questions from our viewing audience tonight?
One thing I wanted to mention with the drop boxes. So drop boxes are open the hours of the location that they're in. So some of them are at city clerk's offices that close at 5 o'clock. Some of them are at grocery stores that close at 9 or 10 o'clock. But on election day, they all have to close at 8. 8 o'clock is when polls close, or satellite offices in our case. Everything has to be closed. So we have a team that will run out and be at all those locations at 8 o'clock and close all those boxes. The law historically said that we could accept ballots through the mail or any type of delivery service as long as they were postmarked on election day up to 3 days after. The new law states that we can receive anything that's postmarked on election day 17 days after. 17 days is so that if the post office does start getting overwhelmed, that we still, can accept the ballots that maybe they got delayed with. But you're getting your ballots today that mailed yesterday, so that's good. They're really keeping up. But if it's not postmarked, we can't accept it also. So if you have people that want to mail their ballot at the last minute, they need to run it in and make sure it gets marked. So I wanted to mention that everything closes at 8 o'clock on election night.
That's very helpful. I don't have any additional questions in the chat. So Donna, was there anything else that you wanted to make sure we all know in preparation for this election?
I don't think so. If you have questions, feel free to call our office. We want to make sure our voters are educated on the process and understand what we're doing and the security we put in place. We're very proud of the fact, and this sounds like an oxymoron, but the grand jury investigated our office last year. Not because we had been accused of anything, but just all the, hubbub in the media about fraud in the election. And our findings, they had no findings. And they also gave us an accommodation for how great our security was. And that's public information. It was given to the Board of Supervisors. So I see one more question.
We did have another question come in. If you vote at a satellite office, would you be voting conditionally?
No. So, well, you can do two things. So if you're a registered voter and you've been a registered voter, you can go to a satellite office, and when you walk in, they will look up your registration, and this is how I explain it to them. So you'll walk into the satellite office and they'll go, "Oh, welcome, Sally Sue. I see that either you have returned your ballot and it's already been counted. So, no need for me to give you another ballot," because that happens. We sent the ballots out October 5th. Sometimes people vote and then they forget, or they don't know if we received it. So they'll go in and want to vote again, which is what the provisional process was for, to make sure that they did not vote twice. Or they'll look them up and say, "Oh, Sally Sue, I see that we have not received your ballot. I'll suspend that ballot and I'm going to print you a new one and you can vote that." Now our system will know if we received that first ballot, it was suspended, so don't count it. It gets, put aside and we wait for that second ballot to come. So they'll mark that and put it in the box there at the satellite office, and we'll collect those every other day and process that. If you are not a registered voter, you have until October 19th to be registered for this election and get your ballot in. But then there are the laws that you can register conditionally, and that you can do at that office. So they'll look you up and say, "I don't see that you're registered in Stanislaus County." They'll give you an envelope that is also your affidavit of registration. We've created these in Stanislaus County to streamline it for our voters so that they aren't filling out two pieces of paper. So they fill out that envelope. They'll be given the ballot for their area. So they'll put them into the system, find out what ballot they received. They'll get that ballot voted, and it goes in that envelope. And what will happen is, once we're done processing all the vote by mail, we will process the conditional voter registration, and we do compare those with other counties and make sure they weren't registered in another county and maybe voted there too. So there's a lot of steps in place to prevent voter fraud.
Thank you. I'm giving everybody one last opportunity to get that final question off their chest. Well, Donna, I want to thank you so much for taking the time tonight. I know you've got a lot on your plate and are certainly busy. This was incredibly informative, and thank you for all that you do on behalf of the citizens of Stanislaus County. And remember, everyone, November 3rd, that's the deadline. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to visit the website for the Clerk Recorder's office, stanvote.com. Certainly reach out and ask any questions of the League of Women Voters of Stanislaus County. And with that, have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.